I'm Karen Kosasa, privileged to be the moderator of this exciting panel. I am the retired director of the Museum Studies Graduate Certificate Program at UH Manoa and am a third-generation Japanese settler currently living in Lower Nu'uanu, Oʻahu. I would like to mahalo Tyler Kahn, who just welcomed us, Amy Andrus, Sarah Fang, Alex Singer, and other staff at HOMA, who, including the Doris Duke Theater staff, who have assisted us in bringing this program to you and other programs that will be featured in the future. The four panelists today in alphabetic order are Lulani Arquette is the founding past president and CEO of the Native Arts and Cultures Foundation, a national organization dedicated to advancing equity and Native knowledge with a focus on arts and cultural expression to strengthen American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian artists and communities. Lulani received the 2021 Beresford Prize, an award that honors cultural leaders and practitioners who have contributed significantly to the advancement, well-being, and care of artists in society. So, Lulani. And then our second presenter will be Drew Kahuaina Broderick. He is an artist, curator, and educator from Mōkapu, Koʻolaupoko, Oʻahu, currently serving as director of the Koa Gallery at Kapulani Community College. Raised in a deep-rooted matriarchy, his work is guided by the multi-generational efforts of Kanaka ʻŌiwi women, especially his mother, aunties, and maternal grandmother, who have devoted their lives to art, education, organizing, and community in Hawaii. And some of his ohana is here today. Our third presenter is Healoha Johnston. She lives in Kaiwiki, Hawaii, and is Director of Cultural Resources and Curator for Hawaii and the Pacific Arts and Culture at Bishop Museum. Johnston's exhibitions and research projects explore connections between historic visual culture and contemporary art, with a particular focus on the social-political underpinnings that inform those relationships. And then our last presenter is Kapulani Landgraf. She is a kupu of Pūʻahuʻula, Kaneʻohe, Landgraf's book, Navahi Pana o Koʻolaupoko and Navahi Kapu o Maui, received the Ka Palapala Poʻokela Awards for Excellence in Illustrative Books in 1995 and 2004, respectively. She published A Luku Valley A with Mark Hamasaki in 2015. She's a professor of art at Windward Community College, Kāneʻohe, Oʻahu, and the artist of the artwork Aua, the reason we are here today. I would also like to thank Stacy Hoshino for helping us keep time. Stacy's in the front here, waving his signs at us. Okay, I will be asking 3 questions for the panelists to answer. So we'll have 3 rounds of questions and responses. Afterwards, we will have time for a Q&A with the audience. So we look forward to getting your responses to some of the discussion that we have here today. Okay, so question number 1, and each of the panelists is limited to 5 minutes. So I hope you will understand that we want to get to the Q&A, so that's why we've limited their presentations. So question number 1, or statement, please address the significance or relevance of the session title, Kui Kamana, or subtitle, Fearlessness in Art, for engaging with Kapulani's work, Aua. So if we would start with Lulani.
Sure. Ano ai kako, aloha everyone, it's great to be here. And just a quick mahalo to Homa and Karen and all the panelists I'm up here with and all of you out there. But since I only have 5 minutes, I'm going to jump right in really quick here. So I'm going to talk about this very personally because Kapu asked me to participate in Aua in 2018. And I was living up on the continent in the Pacific Northwest running an organization called the Native Arts and Cultures Foundation at that time. And so she talked about that she had reached out to many Kanaka ʻŌiwi of different professions in the community to see if they would be willing to be photographed. And she told me that she was inspired by Hainani K. Trask's address at the Iolani Palace in 1993 to over 10,000 people at the time, and that she wanted to put a print across our face, our photographs of, because Hainani had said, I am not Hawaiian, I am not Hawaiian, and I'm not American, oh God, I'm not American, I am not American, and Kapu wanted to say in hers, we are not American, he Hawaii au, mau a mau. And, you know, it's really interesting because our institutions, the NACF, artist institutions, venues, educational, all of the funders, we all have to raise money, we all have to work together, we all have to, we have a lot of partners that we work with and supporters of diverse affiliations and whatnot. And so there's a lot to juggle, and there's risk. There's risk in all the decisions we have to make. Risk is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. And we have to always assess that. But I remembered that day back in 1993 when Haunani gave that address, because I was there. Earlier that year, I had been hired by the Hawaiian Sovereignty Advisory Commission to be the executive director, and we had 19 Kanaka ʻŌiwi commissioners, and the purpose of them was to seek counsel from people, all of our people on all islands, to really how to exercise your human rights to determine your sovereign political status. What does that mean as Kanaka ʻŌiwi and for self-determination and self-governance? So this was one thing that I thought about when she asked me. And then I'm working at NACF as the executive director. We work nationally. We have a lot of different partners of all kinds. But our major goal was to support artists and culture bearers who are doing really cutting edge work and working on issues that address social, environmental, and cultural change. And so we've always helped lift up those artists' voices and enable them to tell their stories through exhibitions, performance work, writing, multidisciplinary work, uncensored, unfettered. That was always us, uncensored, unfettered. So if artists live in constant fear, and if we're afraid of risk, they wouldn't create as compelling of work, and they wouldn't forge new pathways of thinking, and that really help us stimulate critique and help us make change in this world. So Kapu's title, Ku'ikamana, Fearlessness in Art, was significant in several ways to me. And every arts institution, every one of us, university, arts funder, we're going to face risk, as I mentioned earlier, and especially now, with what's going on in our world at this time, and particularly post-pandemic. So what I wanted to say is that there's upheaval in many systems and institutions now, and it's not easy to navigate everything. So courage and fearlessness sometimes means going outside the status quo and challenging norms and antiquated thinking. But there's a yet and a but. It's also about being focused and present, listening, and having some humility. Ho'omau, to persist and persevere. And ho'omanavanui, be patient, find the balance. So when I agreed to have "We Are Not American" written on my face in my photograph, it doesn't mean that I'm anti-American. It doesn't mean that I don't believe in democracy and freedom. It just means I'm Kanaka ʻŌiwi first and foremost. And that's a responsibility that I have to my kupuna and my aumakua. Thank you.
How's it going, everybody? I can sort of see you folks. It's good to be here with you all. Karen, Lulani, Healoha, and Kapu. It means a lot to me to be sitting alongside of the four of you, given all the work that you folks have done for arts and culture here in Hawaii and also elsewhere. So, it's an honor to be up here with you all. And Kapu, thanks for inviting me to be on the panel. I think there are probably folks in the room who are of younger generations that have benefited from Kapu's teachings, whether or not you're a photographer or an artist. You've done a lot for artists and curators of younger generations, and I feel lucky to be a part of that. Kui Kamanla, Fearlessness in Art. Reflecting on the title of the session today and how it allows us to engage with the installation awa, I'm sort of reminded, as Lulani spoke, of the important role that artists like Kapu play, not just within their communities, but also within institutions like this one, which for me, I understand as a part of a larger structure, settler colonial structure in Hawaiʻi. So artists like Kapu, through the vital work that they do, allow us to have these kinds of conversations in these kinds of places. And that feels very related to this notion of fearlessness. But also mana, we think of as power or authority, but mana is also masticating, chewing, breaking things down and passing that knowledge on. So when I think about the different meanings of mana and how they relate to Kapu's installation awa, I'm kind of, I have a lot of questions that come up. One of them is, what are fearless artists masticating? What are they processing? What are they passing on to audiences, to institutions, to other artists? And then another question that comes up for me is sort of, who are the recipients of those powerful teachings that artists are passing on through their work? And what do we do with the knowledge that is given to us through an installation like awa? Yeah, how do we incorporate that into our lives and our practices? And then another question that comes up is, and it's related to this idea of feeding. Yeah, mana, not mana. The other meaning of mana. Who do we feed, and who is fed through the art that we make, or in this case, awa? Yeah, what is awa feeding? Lulani spoke about. I got 2 minutes left. Lulani spoke about sovereignty and self-determination. Yeah, I think awa is a part of that. Yeah, it's feeding that. It's feeding a certain movement in a certain direction. There's an image up on the screen behind me of Namakaho, New Visions. This was the first exhibition of Native Hawaiian contemporary art that took place in the Henry R. Luce Pavilion, which is right over there. That was 2001. Yeah, it's been 22 years and there hasn't been 23 years and there hasn't been an exhibition like it in the Luce Gallery. So Kapu's installation represents a step in the right direction in terms of solo presentation for Native Hawaiian artists. But I think there's also a lot more work to do. Yeah, and maybe the ʻŌiwi leaders that are a part of the shoal of awa that Kapu has assembled can help this institution and its leadership think about what it means to be fearless in the arts. Or, I got 1 minute left now, what it means to be fearful. Yeah, we can't really speak about fearlessness without also speaking about fearfulness. What are the things that we're afraid of as artists or as institutions? And sometimes I think having difficult conversations and taking difficult actions are a part of that process, yeah, of addressing our fears. And in a lot of ways, I think this panel and Kapu's installation awa is helpful in that regard for this institution. Yeah, fearless artists can help fearful organizations work through their fears. And that's just from my perspective, yeah? I'll stop there.
When I think about fearlessness in art and, I think about the context in which art is made and the type of genealogy that that appears in a work of art and the way that Kapulani situated her piece in a genealogy of Aloha ʻaina when she created this installation, awa. And the portrait of Haunani K. Trask, of course, being you know, among the most prominent portraits of the installation. And, you know, Kapulani Landgraf's, when she approached the different folks to participate, you know, she described the way that she wanted to really extend the work that Haunani-Kay Trask did. And, you know, referencing the speech. And one of the things that I thought was so powerful in the work was that Kapulani made is that, you know, the layering, right, of these assertions that are made. Because Haunani-Kay Trask did say, I'm not American, we are not American. And then the way that Kapulani layered over our features, He Hawaiʻi, and alone, that could be read or understood as an ethnicity, I am Hawaiian. But in combination with, I am not American, asserts a form of nationality. And that is a very powerful statement to make. And it was, and again, an extension of the words that Haunani-Kay Trask made. And, you know, bringing that into the current generation, the present generation. And when Haunani-Kay Trask gave that speech, I mean, I think a lot of us can remember where we were when those words were said, and can remember kind of the reverberations after that speech. And in her speech, she was evoking George Helm. And when you listen to the words of George Helm, he was talking about the ʻaliʻi. And so there's this long, multi-generational aloha ʻaina that extends to the present day through ʻaua. And, you know, and I think that's a really, it's an extraordinary responsibility that artists have. And, you know, the mai puina, right, which was a command that was given to us by Queen Liliuokalani, mai puina, do not forget. And I feel like that refusal to forget that shows up in ʻaua is very important. And it brings to the fore this conversation for people today. And so it's not this thing that took place in 1993 or this thing that was happening in the 1960s and 70s or what was happening in the 1800s. It is what is happening in 2024. And, you know, so just again, like the extension of Aloha ʻaina is, I think, you know, a very, it's an important statement that Kapu made. And I think when she invited people to be in the installation, it was an invitation, an incredible opportunity to participate in Aloha ʻaina and the expression of Aloha ʻaina. And again, to just carry through that responsibility going forward.
Aloha. So awa means to withhold or to hold fast. It also is an akule fish that is slightly larger than the rest. And because of that, it's more visible. But it refuses to be caught because it's an awa. Haunani-Kay Trask was an awa. She was fearless. And when talking with Karen about this, she had an anecdote that she shared with me that I was blown away by. So I'll let Karen talk about it.
When I wrote my first article from graduate school, I wrote it, and it was part of my dissertation as a part of a critique of the University of Hawaii Art Department. And I got a lot of flack from it. And so I was lamenting to Haunani-Kay that, oh my God, you know, I've got all these people criticizing me. And she said, oh, whenever she gets criticized, she gets excited, right? Because then she said, it means that she's doing the right thing. And I just looked at her and I went, oh my goodness, you know, you were trained as a political leader. That, you know, I wasn't trained to do that, but it was just so amazing that she was excited when any kind of criticism came her way.
Yeah, how crazy is that, right? So even more you respect her. So I'm going to say something about Haunani, and I don't know if she's going to like this, but here it goes. I don't know what else I can describe it. So Haunani was like a mother. If she believed in what you were doing for the lahui, she supported you completely. So when I first started on photography, I did this a project called Navahipana o Koʻolaupoko. When she saw the exhibition, she said, this is going to be the inaugural publication for the University of Hawaii Center for Hawaiian Studies, now known as Kamaka Koa Gallery, publication. And at that time, I didn't know the criticism that she got for doing it. And for me, what Haunani did for myself and for many others was kui kamana. She provided us a place to stand when there wasn't the opportunity to do so, and she empowered our voices, and that is fearlessness.
Mahalo. Question or round number 2 is going to be, please name or describe particular examples of resistance, resilience, and courage in Kanaka ʻŌiwi art communities. Lulani?
Okay, this was a hard one, real hard, and because they're sitting right up here on the stage. You got all 3 of these next to me, some Karen, just wonderful people. But for Kanaka ʻŌiwi, I have to say it was so difficult for me that because there's so many amazing ones, even many of the awardees that may be here or that are shift and lift awardees have never even had anything to do with NACF, and Kanaka ʻŌiwi artists that are doing compelling work. So for purposes of the panel, I decided to talk briefly about an artist who is not Kanaka ʻŌiwi. And we supported her in 2013 as a National Artist Fellow. And ironically, 2013 was the year that we selected our first Kanaka ʻŌiwi visual artist, and that was right there at the end there, Kapulani. So it's kind of there's some synchronicity to that. But Rose B. Simpson is the artist. She's a mixed media artist from Santa Clara Pueblo in New Mexico. And she graduated from the Rhode Island School of Design with their MFA in ceramics in 2011. She's collected in museums across the country. She's exhibited internationally. And it's really interesting because I've watched Rose's work from 2013 to now. And how she's always been fearless in her exhibitions and the work that she's done. But her more current work is Dream House. And it's this really reflective piece that I think is influenced by this point she's at in her life. She's a small child now, so she's a mother. And the times that we're experiencing now, particularly post-pandemic, with really high levels of trauma and stress, her work stems from these moments of deep observation and connection to the past, and emphasizing this process of becoming and making, in which we discover these new ways of healing and being. So Dream House is it was exhibited at the Fabric Workshop and Museum in Philly, October 22nd to May 23rd. And I just want to mention one thing before I show you the clip. She does this work with clay called Slap Slab. And each piece she works with is embedded with her fingerprints and different other parts of her hands. So it leaves evidence of her hands and traces of the act of creating art. And so when you look at this, her process, she says, her process is important and paramount, and it reveals the truth of the moment being put into the work. So I'm going to show, we can show the clip now.
You always have dreams that you're in a house. It's often the parts of your psyche. And the different rooms are different places in your mind, your spirit. A recurring place that represents the parts of ourselves at different times of our lives. As we come to the rooms in this exhibit, your shadow is cast on the wall. And we begin with the awareness of our body and our impact in that space. I would ask people to enter into the space with the kind of reverence that we would enter into our own psychological spaces, that we would navigate our own internal spaces. Even if that sensitivity isn't a comfortable neural pathway, we can build one. This is how we start. My work is so much about giving back self or consciousness to things that we have deemed lifeless. There are 3 masks in the workroom, and in that sort of pressure, you're sitting in the hot seat, you're being watched by more than we would ever know. And it's supportive. It's also probably a little bit critical at times, right? But how do you act when you know you have this community that's larger than what we perceive? We're on this grind, right? And it goes and goes and goes. It's not necessarily a bad thing, it's actually the deliciousness of life, right? This is it. I wouldn't be doing this work if it wasn't the thing that I needed to learn the most. And so everything that I do like this, hopefully is tipping the scale, every rock on the side where my life becomes more conscious and more intentional and more prayerful. My goal, my dream.
So, just to recap, examples of projects that demonstrate resistance, resilience, and courage. Okay. So the 2, I guess maybe first I should say I teach at Kapulani Community College, and over the past couple of years have had a chance to lead Art 189, which is the Introduction to Hawaiian Art class, thanks to Kapu. And in that class, whenever we talk about examples of resistance in Kanaka ʻŌiwi creative communities, we always try to couple it to a discussion of affirmation, so that it's not just saying no to one thing, but also saying yes to something else at the same time. And I think that helps to keep us moving and not just like stuck. So the 2 examples I'm going to talk about do that. They resist and they affirm. This one, the image that's on screen now is of My Ho'ohuli Kalimai Luna, and that was an exhibition I got to work on with Kapu and Kaili-chan back in 2020. And it was the first time that the Hawaii State Foundation on Culture and the Arts presented a Native Hawaiian contemporary art exhibition at the Hawaii State Art Museum from its Art in Public Places collection around 20 years after the museum opened. Through that process, we did an informal and unofficial evaluation of the collection and determined that around 3% of the holdings were artwork made by Native Hawaiian artists, despite Native Hawaiians representing around 20% of the population. Yeah, so there's a pretty major discrepancy. Out of that process, you can go to the next slide. The SFCA has made a commitment to acquiring, exhibiting, programming, and commissioning art by Native Hawaiian artists. And so between 2020 and 2022, Native Hawaiian artists accounted for 18% of the acquisitions, commissions. And so that's a pretty significant difference. Hopefully it continues and it's not just a little spike in otherwise desolate chart. But I learned a lot through that experience, and I think it's a good example of the way that resistance and affirmation can be coupled together within Kanaka ʻŌiwi creative communities. The next project I'm going to talk about really quickly just wrapped up, and that was a curatorial collaboration with Noel Kahanu, who's over there, and Josh Tengon. I don't know if Josh is here, but we worked on this together, in part with funding from the Native Arts and Culture Foundation through the SHIFT, Transformative Change and Indigenous Arts program. So thank you, Lulani, for that. And this, I got 2 minutes. This project, like the previous one, it was also a creative act of resistance and affirmation. Sometimes in the art world, we talk about them as institutional critique. Yeah, it's a way that an artist or a curator or a community can speak back to the place that is hosting an exhibition or an installation. So this project, Aipohaku, Stone Eaters, brought together intergenerational group of artists, some well-known, others newcomers, to basically tell a story of Kanaka ʻŌiwi contemporary art that began in the 1970s and continues today. So it took place across 6 different venues, interconnected venues within the University of Hawaii's system and the East-West Center. Thanks to Karen and Kopu and the rest of the villagers, there were 10 public programs. And we also drafted and circulated a petition. And I think for this question, that's the most important part of what I'm going to share. In the petition, we made certain demands. And one of them, in my final minute, was a demand for a new hire, tenure track professor of Native Hawaiian visual arts within the University of Hawaii at Manoa Art and Art History Department. That department's been around a long time. They've never had a position like this. And testament to the positive impact of this project on that educational environment, they're currently hiring two finalists. I don't know if any of them are here, but best of luck to my ka'i and to Kaili. I think it took a long time, and as Karen mentioned briefly, the paper that you wrote that Haunani applauded you for is actually the beginning of this position, and that was in 1998. Yeah, so it's taken 26 years. But I think this exhibition helped to accelerate that process. And I think I have to stop now. Yeah.
This is a photograph by Franco Salmaraghi, and he documented a lot of the activity during the Hawaiian Renaissance. And when I think about resistance and resilience, the Hawaiian Renaissance is a powerful time period for Hawaii. It recalibrated, Hawaii for everybody, not just for Kanaka. And in this photograph, what you're seeing is, the U.S. military coming to evacuate Hawaiians who occupy Koʻolaupoko because they couldn't bomb the island so long as people were there. So people went there. And, there's all these pictures that Franco took of like kupuna, elder Hawaiian women who were on a boat going there to pray and to bring back, rematriate Hawaii to the sacred and to the people. And yet they were framed as like militants who were considered armed and dangerous. And that was the narrative. And yet what came out of the Hawaiian Renaissance, was gathering rights, policy change. And that lived in the gallery and lives in the gallery in a way that is considered commonplace today. This is an installation by Maile Andrade where she processed Vauke to the point of a particular state, not kapa, but to a mo'omomi phase where it could be then like repurposed later. And she suspended these from the ceiling. And, I think a lot of times we can sort of look at art installations today and think, well, it's artistic liberty, right? And artists can choose their material and artists can go and gather. And we have to remember, actually, that's the result of a social justice movement. It was a struggle. What we see in the gallery today, like Olelo Hawaii, that was a struggle. this, so we accept these things as norms, but I feel like we have to like acknowledge the people who fought for that. Imai Kalahele, who did text-based work when it wasn't popular, normalize that, And so, when I think about resistance, it's like, yeah, because I'm in a position now, because these other people fought and were dismissed in many cases, or were marginalized, or were silenced in whatever way they could be. But then, persistence, right? So, do I have another slide? Yeah. So this was, this was circulated in 2021. And this was such an incredible document that was drafted by students in the art and art history department at UH Manoa. And in this, they cite the genealogy, right? They're talking about the work that Pi'ikea and Karen did, to, critique the absence of Native and Indigenous knowledge within the narrative of the art department and the composition of the faculty. And, the students in 2021 were challenging the institution to do the institutional reckoning, which all institutions have been called to do, around structural racism, around, the efforts of decolonization and indigenization, and to think about the implications for the sake of the students. And, this was an incredible act of bravery for the students to call out their own department, but to situate, again, their work within this longer, multi-generational effort of activism.
So this is the artwork of Andre Perez, large-scale projection art. When I saw the image projection of the Hawaii State Capitol, I thought how perfectly executed it was. Even more so that it happened 3 days after Haunani-Kay Trask passed away. What a way to honor her. The other image is a projection on a Navy ship at Keawalau o Pūʻahuʻula, or Pearl Harbor, done recently on January 17, 2024, the 131st anniversary of the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom, and also just happened to be when Aua opened at the Honolulu Museum of Art. I think that's why Andre was late to the opening, but okay. Sorry, I do two things at once. So Andre does what he calls action art, a critical component of nonviolent direct action of social justice issues. So here they did the banners and the silkscreen signs at Pūʻahuʻula on the first day at Mauna Kea, the stand. So I'm not going to do justice to Andre. He does many things within community. One thing that I will mention as part of FESPAC, he is gathering the largest gathering of sculptures of the Pacific Islands at Bishop Museum. So please go check it out. I think it starts January 7th. I'm not sure. June 7th. Okay. But what you can do is you can see Andre. He'll be here on August 18th, Sunday. It's a free for ʻaina. He will be doing a silkscreen workshop. So bring your t-shirts, come talk story to Andre, and please support the important work that he does for ala hui.
Okay, the third question is, what do you want to see happen in the visual arts community locally? Lulani?
Yeah, thank you. Oh, I have to mention the reason I'm focusing some of my examples on other Indigenous people that we support. First of all, because I want to keep emphasizing that I had so much. We've just supported so many Native Hawaiian and Kanaka ʻŌiwi artists. It's really hard to make choices. So I'm going to let these guys do all of that. But the question, I would like to see more coordinated partnerships between Hawaii artists and arts institutions and artists and arts institutions on Turtle Island, the continent. and even internationally for that matter. And that's first. And then second, I would like to see more discussion and awareness building between land back and rematriation efforts that are happening, have really escalated in the last few years, particularly since the pandemic. And I want to focus on that. This building that you see here is the Center for Native Arts and Cultures. A few of you have been there. Miley came out and her sisters. And it's a commercial laundry building. It was gifted to the Native Arts and Cultures Foundation in 2019 and then in 20, right during the pandemic. And it was, it's half a city block, 40,000 square feet, a basement and 2 floors. And the narrative we had around that was really begin doing the work around rematriation. What does that really mean? And can we go to the next slide? So these are an exhibition that we had done last year called Resistance, Adaptation, and Resilience. It was a traveling exhibition with over 50 Alaska Native artists and several Alaska institutions and 5 different places across the United States. We were the 3rd place. And it opened in May of 2023. What's interesting, if you look at that piece in the back there, that looks like a big shirt, that is actually a Caspic project that the artist was Amber Webb. And these are portraits that ink-drawn portraits that she depicting over 100 murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls from Canada and the North American United States. And in this work, this is a 13-foot high cotton caspic. A caspic are Yupik style garments that are worn. And it was really created as an honoring and acknowledgement of the sacredness of life and the decades of advocacy for Indigenous women across North America for their own sovereign right to health and safety. And she's experienced this in her own family, the artist, and there's many, many other families that have experienced this. Let's go to the next one, please. And this was the one, we had only like 6 weeks between these 2 exhibitions, for those of you to put that one down. This is in our exhibition hall. It's about 2,800 or 2,800 square feet, I think. And this is called Chords to Chords Relative. And it's a neon sculpture as part of the Converge 45 biennial that we have in Portland, Oregon every other year. And this happened in 2023. The artist is Marie Watt, and she's been here. I think you guys had exhibited her here in the biennial. Yeah. And she's from the Seneca Nation of New York, but grew up mostly in Portland. And Watt says that she responds to this notion of what she calls material collision. And she uses reclaimed wood on the back of that, and then as the backing for the neon. And then she quilted and stitched together paper ephemera from Indigenous communities nationally. She asked him for things, a meaning, a word, a sentence that has some meaning to you. And then the neon lights went in front of that. And she's interested in what happens, this is her language, with the quilted and layered materials and the neon. She says naming can silo ideas and also materials. How do these intersections make us rethink our relationship to the world in which these materials are embedded in our everyday experiences? And underneath the building in our basement of this building, we have a creek that runs through it that we're going to repurpose and keep there. And it was kind of, she mic'd the creek, the sound of the water in this exhibit also. And then she said, this is where I really hope to expand the idea of Turtle Island. And if we were to open up a dictionary and look up the word land, it's this very specific thing. But to me, to her, the land is the water and the air we're breathing. It's what runs underneath our feet. So, thank you.
Hopes for the local arts ecosystem. Was that the question? Okay. Similar to what Lulani shared, I really am hopeful about sort of an increase in discourse here in Hawaii around the arts. I think there's, we have a pretty good grasp of what production and display mean here, but we don't have, we're not really comfortable, from my perspective, with this idea of review, of discourse, whether or not that's through programs like this or through writing, narrative, descriptive, informative, argumentative, etc., writing about art. I think that's definitely something that's missing here in Hawaii, and in a lot of ways is as important as making something. Because if you make something but it's never documented, it might as well not exist. And I think a lot of the issues that younger scholars are encountering now is because there is an absence of documentation related to the 2 or 3 generations above us. There are no photos. There are very few photos. There are some articles, not many. And most of the articles are not written by us. They're written about the work that we make by somebody who usually is not from Hawaii. So the image that's on the screen right now is a project that I got to do recently as an artist in the Singapore Biennale named Natasha. And I got to collaborate with my mom, Miley, who's here. And this is an image of one of the public programs that we put on. I don't know if you can see the guy in the back with the mic, but that's Guiding Spirit, Mr. Richard Hamasaki, who's over here. So Richard came out and did a poetry reading. All this to say that the conversations around art, for me, are a lot more important than the object. And that's something that's difficult, I think, for some artists to accept. But it's, like, aua is one thing. Talking about aua is another thing. And in discussing aua as a group, we arrive somewhere else than wherever we maybe were when we walked through by ourselves. And so Karen, that's really what I hope for. I think more participation in the global biennial and triennial circuit, in international art conferences and publications and research initiatives. And as we participate beyond Hawaii, I think what we're doing here will become a lot more meaningful, not just for us, but for people elsewhere. And I feel like Kanaka ʻiwi artists are at a point right now, especially Kapu's generation, where we are able to participate. Hey, it's all right. We are able to participate internationally in a way that we haven't since maybe Rocky in the early 80s. So it's been a long time. And I think as we're participating abroad, I got 2 minutes, we need to be writing about it. We need to be talking about it. We need to be documenting it. So Karen, maybe it's also a plea for more arts writers. It's fun to make art, but sometimes we got to write about it too. And that is a hope that I have for the community here, that we document the work that we're doing. And it's a privilege and a luxury to be able to do that, because sometimes we're just trying to do, right? We're just trying to make the work. We're just trying to pay the rent. But if we make the work and we don't talk about it or we don't document it, why make it at all? I'll stop there.
Karen, can you repeat the question for me? I remember what I'm going to say, but I just wanted to make sure I'm speaking specifically to the question.
What do you want to see happen in the visual arts community locally?
Yeah. So, the 2 points that came to my mind when Karen and Kapulani posed this question was rematriation and allyship. And so rematriation, the rejection of dominance over land and bodies, and the restoration of relationships between people and ʻaina, which is a lot like the way Marie Watt described, land being more than land. And then allyship, like showing up for each other. And in many cases, showing up for ʻaina has been left to Kanaka. And that is unfair. We all live here. And fundamentally very problematic. And I feel like when Shut Down Red Hill started, it was like the most incredible act of solidarity, because there were so many people coming together to advocate, for water and for our dependency on it. And like just, the need for us to participate in our own well-being by advocating for the well-being of ʻaina. And, an artist whose work I love, Ashley Lukashevsky, she's Korean haole, an illustrator, and I think is an incredible ally. And when she created this print, she did so, and all proceeds went to getting the folks who'd been arrested up at the Mauna out of jail. And, and I thought, like, what an incredible way for her to show up and be an ally. And then this exhibition is, it was called Project Banaba, featured the work of an artist named Katerina Tiaiwa. She's Banaban. She lives in Australia. And this exhibition was co-curated by Yuki Kihara, Joy Enomoto, and me. And the exhibition looks at the way that the island of Banaba in the Pacific was mined to the point of being uninhabitable for its fertilizer. So the land was very, very rich in phosphates. And it was mined, to the point where the people who lived there had to be evacuated. They became refugees. And all for the sake of fertilizer. And so it was pitched as being like for the good of humanity, that we have fertilizer to make food and grow food, right? So, but what it really did was support industrial agriculture on a next level scale. And Katerina approaches countries that imported this fertilizer from Banaba. Hawaiʻi imported this fertilizer from Banaba. And therefore we are implicated in this. And Bishop Museum had records from 1900s that were, documenting the way that the Big Five were brokering and importing phosphate from Banaba. And the artist merges her own personal archive with national archives to disclose the way that this was justified, and simultaneously then argue the fact that clearly, the British Empire, Australia, New Zealand, who had control over this entire enterprise, were the wrongful stewards, because the rightful steward would not make its people refugees and the land completely obliterated. And so curatorially, this was an act of solidarity with the people of Banaba and with Katerina to feature this exhibition that, again, looks at rematriation in a three-dimensional form, the space of a gallery.
So I would like to see not just within the Hawaiian art community, but in Hawaii's art community, and even more so in every arena that we have kuleana in. I'm going to give you some Hawaiian words. So the first one is kupa, long-term unwavering commitment and consistency of excellence. This is Keone Nunes, and yes, that is Jason Momoa getting his head ʻŌiwi. Next one is noiʻi, rigor of research and search for knowledge and understanding to even the smallest detail. This is April Hokulandi Drexel. Okay, so I say no'iao, some people call no'iao, same thing, but I like the no'i part. Professionalism along the lines of mastery of refined skills in terms of craftsmanship and presentation. Ka'ili-chan. Ho'opunihei, rich concepts and content driven by engagement critical to Kanaka ʻŌiwi, time, place, and space. And the last one is a'a, to be bold and brave, to dare and defy, and to challenge. Au'a.
So mahalo. And yes, Great. So we've kept to our time pretty much, and so we're going to have time to have a nice conversation with our audience. So it's time for our Q&A, and I hope that some of the comments and insights that were presented here by our panelists have sparked or inspired you to think about certain things that we want to do here locally in the arts and also further. So now we will entertain questions, and the way it's going to run is that because we don't have a mic for you, you'll raise your hand. I will call on you. You will tell us your question, and if it's not loud enough, I need to repeat it back. Okay. Anyway, so this is how it'll run. And we have, it's like 25 minutes maybe, and then we have some announcements to make at the very end for more programming that's coming up. Okay, so anybody want to ask the first question? Yeah. Okay.
This is something that I've thought about quite a bit. I think that we live at a time where ʻŌiwi are faced with challenges in terms of identity. So we have ʻŌiwi who do art, who do creative things. We also have ʻŌiwi artists. I happen to think there's a difference between the two. I'm wondering whether or not our panelists have any thoughts about ʻŌiwi artists versus ʻŌiwi art, and the challenges that young people who are ʻŌiwi, who are trying to do creative stuff, face in that regard today. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
what I'm asking.
Yeah, and well, we heard it loud and clear. How about you guys up there, back there? You all heard it? Yeah. Thank you so much for, projecting your voice. Okay, so panelists, anyone, game to, present?
I was going to ask you if you could share what you think the difference is, because it seems like you have thought about this.
I have thought about it a lot. I think that one of the challenges for being ʻŌiwi today, and I consider myself ʻŌiwi, I actually consider myself Kanaka, and I prefer not to differentiate between Kanaka ʻŌiwi and Kanaka Maoli, because I think that in and of itself ends up causing divergent thinking and discussion. Anyway, I think that there are ʻŌiwi artists who maybe feel under some kind of pressure to produce so-called ʻŌiwi art. And so if we talk about kuikamana and fearlessness in art, to my way of thinking, that in and of itself as a topic puts pressure on ʻŌiwi artists to be a certain way in terms of they're doing art. Absolutely. And it just seems to me that there may be some people who are ʻŌiwi who just want to do creative things, and so I'm wondering whether or not ʻŌiwi artists today feel themselves under some kind of pressure to go in a certain direction by virtue of the fact that they're ʻŌiwi and they're doing art. And so I'm just kind of curious what you folks as panelists think about that.
So, Drew, do you want to?
I just appreciate you sharing a bit more, because I think it helps us understand where you're at in terms of how you're thinking about those things. And we're probably all have different relationships to those terms than you do. For me, we're in a moment right now where identifying as something. Oh yeah, sure. We're in a moment right now where identifying as something is not just the decision of the individual. And I think that's part of what's so interesting to me about community. Yeah, community claims in the same way that it is claimed. So we might have a young ʻŌiwi artist who doesn't think of what they're doing as ʻŌiwi art. But if somebody in the room stands up and says, yes, it is, then it is. And I think that's part of a process of maturing as an artist. And sometimes it takes elders claiming you as something to move that process along. And I think, yeah, that's sort of my thoughts on the difference between the two. We don't always get to be what we want to be. Sometimes other people tell us what we are. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily think of those things in like terms of definition. But what you got me thinking about was the writing of Larry Neal, who wrote about the Black Arts Movement, and he in the 1960s, and he talked about the Black Arts Movement as an ethical movement. And he said ethical and aesthetic are one. So your ethics are your aesthetics and your aesthetics are your ethics. And I think that, you know, maybe something similar could be said of Kanaka ʻiwi art as an ethical approach to aesthetics, and that kind of opens up the space for what that creative production can be. It can be, yeah, resistance, and it can be, you know, toward justice. Justice looks a lot of ways. Justice includes joy for all. Like, why shouldn't everyone get to rest? Why shouldn't everyone get to feel joy? You know, so I feel like, you know, there are a lot of examples in the very recent past leaning into contemporary art where this thinking, you know, I think offers us good points of reference to consider as we think about Kanaka ʻiwi art.
I don't see a difference. If you're Kanaka, you do Kanaka art. Yeah, I mean, just look at, I think when I first started in photography, I could never get a grant because they said it's not a traditional art form. But if my ancestors, you saw how far they took their artwork, wouldn't matter. They would have embraced anything. So for me, there's no difference. And I don't believe in labels. You make your own label.
You know, we've faced this to some degree as a regranting organization with so many artists. And I'm a little bit more in line with the Kapu in what she's saying, because, you know, when you create work and art, all of it becomes, there's an experience of joy and beauty in all of it. And I think that at some point, along the evolution of that creation and production, whether you're doing it individually or as a collective group. And there's learning in that. And I think that, you know, it doesn't have to be resistance or political all the time. It's still evolving always. And so, for example, we've supported many kapa makers, Sabra Kauka, Delani Tanahi, and on. Marie McDonald, before she passed, we had done some partnerships with her. And I think that, I think sometimes we seem to box some of these things in a little bit, thinking, oh, it's political resistance, you're activist, you have to create something that, and that, I don't think it is. I think if it's Kanaka ʻiwi doing the art or Kanaka Maoli doing the art, it's Kanaka art.
Oh, yes, Noelle. So loud. Excuse me. Did everybody hear Noelle's question? Yeah, okay. So, pardon?
Make it easier for us.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Noelle is saying that it seems like then there has been a lot of pushback and criticism of ʻAʻa, which for some
None.
people,
No, wait, no, she said none.
yeah, hasn't been, right. There has not been, right. I'm sorry. Yeah, and she's just wondering how then does Kapulani view this in terms of, you know, the lack of criticism and, you know, do you have any thoughts about that?
Is it criticism or is it the thing of being fearless? I mean, different to me. Those are different to me. But just, I'm not there every day, so I don't know what people are saying, so just know that. But I think the first iteration of ʻAʻa was a little bit more intimidating by how it was mounted with a different type of media. You were confronted in a room. And I think with this installation, it's your eye level, it's on nice digital paper, you kind of walk right through it. It's not as intimidating. And if you saw the first one, maybe it was a lot more easier. I mean, but even the first one, I really thought that I would get pushback from not the Hawaiian community, but the non-Hawaiian community. But no one came up to me, whether they were afraid of me or not, I don't know. But it has been very receptive. So I think the pushback came in doing the work, more by people who didn't want to participate, which for me was shocking. Because for me, easy to do that. And like, it really triggered me to, you know, as an artist, for me, it's all about process. It's like, okay, what do you do now, right? I mean, to the point that, you know, I really wanted it to be from floor to ceiling. You know, I wanted it to be like 400 people that would say yes, but I had a hard time to fill the space. And that was the difficult part. And not only for people to tell me no, but people to tell me, okay, you got to sit down. I got to tell you why I'm just telling you no. And for me, that became too much. I had to internalize, you know? So, I mean, I don't know. You would have to ask other people what they think if they want to be critical about it. I think it's definitely a different time, place, and space. I mean, the original idea was the Native Arts and Cultural Foundation paid for Ka'ili-chan and I to go to the Venice Biennale in 2015 with the hope that we could maybe show on a collateral event because Hawaiians were not being able to show internationally. And when I went there, I mean, I was blown away by the fearlessness of what I saw in the artwork, where I don't see that here. And that's where the idea for ʻAʻa came. It was in Venice, right? And it didn't happen because it was just way too expensive. So you know, it came back, and when the opportunity came to be in the biennial, I know I talked to Nina about it. I met Nina, she was a curator, and I know I was just like, you either take this or I'm not gonna be in it. And I apologized to her. Now, I didn't know how forceful I was, but it was really important that you needed a venue, and that was the only venue that I had. And to the point that when in January, I think it was January, I talked to Healoha and I said, you know, I don't think I can do it. I was just so physically ill that there's no way I can do it. And then I said, hey man, suck it up. This is your opportunity to do it. You really wanted to do it. It's an important thing. Get it done. It says 10 minutes left. So, I don't know.
Drew.
Oh yeah. So what happened was after the show went up, all I heard was, honestly, how come she never asked me to be in it? Like, how come and it was like, forget it. And then even more so when Haunani passed away. I had one of my students who was in the show. He said, hey, can you let me have the image that you did for me? I want to put it on Facebook as my page as a way to honor Haunani. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool, right? So sent it to him and he popped it up. And then other people started asking me. And then I said, oh, maybe I should do this to everyone. So I started, and everyone started popping up on Facebook. Then I started getting these messages from people I don't even know. And they wanted to know, can you please tell me what app you did to do this? I want to put that on my face. And so it became like, it became just went too far. And to the point that, I said at the beginning that these 108 people who said yes to me, like I thought, oh, this would be kind of cool to make it bigger. But in honoring them, and for them, I really think it was a risk. Noel, I don't know, ask you. But I think it was a risk for them, and now it is not that risk because it has been done. So I'm never going to add to it. It will always be what it is, and that's the way it is.
I'd actually like to add to that. So as an educator and someone who's also going to be involved with Noel and our dear friend Helena Kapuni Reynolds, we're going to be part of a workshop, an educator workshop next week, Saturday. And one of the things that I think is really important for us to raise and for me as an educator to think through is, on the one hand, while people are celebrating Aua and saying, it's a wonderful piece, I really love it and all, I'm interested in the implications of the piece. Are you actually then, addressing or confronting or thinking about what does this work mean when you have 108, Kanaka ʻŌiwi saying, we are not Hawaiian, right? we are not Americans. Sorry, okay. No, we're getting confused. But I feel that if we're going to engage with it at a deeper level, it will bring up questions. It will bring up questions about your identity. I'm a settler. And so what does it mean then for a settler to hear Hawaiians say that? And what does it mean then to live in a state then that is, you can say colonized or occupied, whatever it is, and how then do we contribute every day to this colonization? And what are we, what is our obligation to change this? So the issue of rematriation. So I think that there are different levels to engage with the work, that we can go beyond just loving it, right? And saying, oh, I agree with it. There's the whole thing of what does it mean? What is she teaching us? And that's where I think the problems come. That's where I think the difficult knowledge comes, when you're going to see how we are participating in this colonized space, so that you have to have all these Hawaiians say, we are not Americans. I don't know. Miliana? Yeah.
Sounds like there's a little we over here.
Yeah.
It's also important for me to acknowledge, thank you, Karen, and all of you. Context is really important. God bless. But I can tell you, in the 70s, of course, we're occupying buildings. And when I was at university, the big thing was Angela Davis and Malcolm X. And so Hamani was very, very deeply influenced by those guys. So let's just face it, that's an anger and an upset. And Lulani, you talked about beauty and joy. Well, that's great. I dig on that, but there's so much else. And I think that's why these conversations are so profound. Because for the first time, there are enough of us, beloved, and you all here, so that we actually feel comfort, and that we don't feel like we're going to get drilled or accosted or, criticized to the point of feeling shit. Okay? So it's really important for you all to know that this show is one person, one artist's point of view. Typically what ends up happening, everybody thinks, well, everybody agrees, or everybody is part of that. When in fact, that's not necessarily the case. I respect Kapu as an artist, and that's important. That's really important for me to say. moment with, at least for me, with Nani, where she was so angry, and that's what I knew. And it wasn't something that I could relate to. It didn't mean that I was wrong or she was right. It just means, thank God we have a place where we can actually have conversations and I can walk, talk, and do whatever the hell I want to. You know, and it's really important that the other outside community understand that we're not a monolith. We are not, you know, and that's important. So please answer that question of we are not a monolith. Why is that important for the four of you up there to be here to speak to all of us? Because your answers and your responses are really important. Thank you so much.
But ultimately, just to clarify, you're asking about you're asking about the difference that is a part of a Kanaka ʻiwi experience, not the sameness that all Hawaiians are the same. Okay.
Did you want to address that?
I mean, just in the past 10 years, because that's when I came back home from college, the idea of community, the Kanaka ʻiwi community or communities, and now we're talking about like more than one. And that's changed for me in the past 10 years. When I came home and I questioned the community, it was, of course, there's only one community. What are you talking about? And I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, but we're all doing a part of different communities. So I think that happens with time. And I think that for our generation, we're privileged to be able to say that we have more than one community because we're thriving in a different way than maybe we were in '93 when Haunani said what she said, where it was all about unifying as one community to achieve political sovereignty. I don't know. Those are my thoughts on it.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. Yeah, we have 2 minutes left, so we got one more question. Someone? I would think. Don't you want to ask? Oh, no. Really? Oh, yeah. You're going to have to yell it out. Yeah, mahalo. I think that's actually a really great idea because we all live in our silos, and we do know that we have to have these more complicated relationships and deal with, the complexity of the different communities out there. But does anybody have a response? Okay, so we've actually come to the end, and I want to thank all of you for coming on a busy Sunday. We have a number of announcements. Did you want it? Because we have a couple. Okay. Yeah. So the museum has made these wonderful, do you call them? Yeah, pamphlet. And they're in the back there of the theater. And, it has all the programs listed. And then they have this wonderful portrait of Haunani Kea on it. And they've done a beautiful job, so I would say, please take them. They're in the back. And then also, next month, because every month we are having a community program, next month is Kui Kamana, Voices of Poetic Justice. And we've got flyers down here at the front. Yeah, they're in front. And so this is going to be on Sunday, May 19th, from 2 to 3:30. Again, on a day when families are going to become ʻaina are all free. So please bring your families and friends and come. And it would be nice if you registered, but even if you don't register, we welcome everyone. So, yeah.
And also I made these, so when Queen Liokalani was imprisoned in Iolani Palace, she made these ribbons. It says, Mai poina oea'u, do not forget me. So, and on the bottom it's stamped HKT for Honani K Tras. So I think in taking this with you, it's to remember not to forget. So please come up and get some.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say mahalo to all of you for this this conversation, and to all of you for being here. I mentioned at the beginning what I did about the artists of the Pacific at the Venus Biennale, and the moment that we are having right now, in order to just drive home the point that the conversations that we are having right now and that you just heard are hardly peripheral. They are central to a global conversation around arts and culture right now. So we are in a very privileged position to be here, and I certainly feel privileged as somebody who can say I am not Hawaiian to have been here and listening to you all. So mahalo once again. Thank you.